The first Samurai Warriors came out all the way back in 2004. I know, feel old yet? That's like 16, 17 years ago. It was a success and people wanted more, so Koei, being Koei, provided more, a lot more, and the series is still going strong to this day. There's another major release just around the corner, and Samurai Warriors 5 is doing something no other Samurai Warriors game has done. They are completely overhauling the game, revamping its entire cast of characters, removing many of the series staples, including the poster boy Yukimura Sanada. Many will be returning in Samurai Warriors 5, of course, and many more of the familiar faces might be coming back at a later date, maybe with DLC or in future games. But it just dawned on me that this is kind of a big occasion. Unlike Dynasty Warriors, which has reinvented itself multiple times, for better or for worse, over the course of its run, Samurai Warriors has remained consistent. It's had the same cast of characters since 2004, up until its last major release, Samurai Warriors 4-2, back in like 2016, 2017 or something. For that whole time, for 4 main games and several spin-offs and crossovers, Koei have kept the same cast of characters and built on it, adding new characters, sometimes temporarily taking some out, but we've gotten to know and get used to the cast of Samurai Warriors. Even in terms of their gameplay mechanics, they've remained relatively consistent for more than 15 years now, but now, for the first time in over 15 years, we're gonna have to say goodbye to this cast of characters. At least for now. But if Samurai Warriors 5 is a success, maybe forever. At least this cast of characters as we know it now. And that's both exciting and sad. I'm gonna miss a lot of these faces until they make their return. So before they make their exit, I want to take some time to look at each and every member of the Samurai Warriors cast. Evaluate how fun they were to play as, who had the best design, the best story, etc. All of this is completely subjective, of course. I'm only going to be ranking them based on my opinion alone, but I'm thinking I might open up a poll or something to you guys watching this, so that you can get your opinion on who is S tier and who is trash tier. So what are the metrics that I judge a character by then? Well, first off, there's their gameplay. How good does it feel to play that character, and how powerful are they? Do they have any exploits or hacks with their gameplay mechanic? Next, I'm going to be judging their story and characterization. Do they have a compelling story that is told for them? How is it told across all of the games in the series? Do they have a likable personality or memorable and hilarious cutscenes? If a character has all of this going for them, I might choose to play them even if they're not that strong mechanically. Finally, design. How cool is their hair and their armor and their weapon and their general look? Do they have a cool voice actor or anything like that going for them? For each character, I'm going to rate these 3 fields on a tier list, from D tier being the lowest, going up through C, B, A, and then finally S tier being the highest. And then once I've given each character a score in these 3 fields, I'll average that score and that'll be their final rating. But this is going to be a little more than just ranking characters on a tier list. This is going to be something of a farewell ceremony. So we're going to talk about the character's history, their most memorable moments in the series, changes to their designs and their movesets between games, and how much I'll miss them. Now, I will be ranking the characters on a standard tier list. It's got D tier, C tier, B tier, A tier, and S tier. But I've added plus and minuses to B and A tier, just because I feel like a lot of characters are going to end up here. And I feel like it's worth distinguishing the solid A's from the light A's, you know what I mean? Also, I made an I don't know tier for the characters from Spirit of Sanada, because I never played that game. And I will be ranking the characters in a completely random order. Oh, also, I'll do my best to pronounce their names, but I don't speak Japanese. I'm an English-speaking layman, amateur weeb, so don't expect perfect pronunciation, but I will try my best. The first character we're going to be talking about today is Musashi Miyamoto.
I shall continue along my path. Surely a blade that slayed men can be used to protect them as well.
Musashi made his first appearance in Samurai Warriors 2. Unlocking him in that game was no easy task. You had to complete like every other story mode to get him. So given the fact that he's one of the last characters you unlock, and one of the most famous names of the time period, Musashi has high expectations on his shoulders. So can he rise to the occasion? First off, since we're talking about a famous master swordsman, we better talk about his gameplay mechanics. In Samurai Warriors 2, Musashi is really solid and well-rounded. His base charge move is a melee guard break, but it can't be comboed off of unless you use the extended version. His one square triangle is a good juggle attack that deals higher than normal damage. And he's got a couple more guard breaks, although they are at the end of fairly long combos. I personally prefer when a guard break is at the beginning, because I don't want to have an entire combo blocked just to break their guard at the end of it. He's got really good crowd clearing ability, and he's pretty damn good at dealing with officers. I wouldn't say he's particularly busted or OP in Samurai Warriors 2 in any particular regard, but he does everything at like a solid A to A plus level. So he would be a great character for beginners, ironically, but he's a character you don't unlock until the end of the game, so whoops. He's got two pretty damn good special moves. One is a pretty powerful counter attack with a pretty big and forgiving window. When you pull off this counter attack, he goes whoosh 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 and slashes enemies all around him in a pretty big area. It's really good. I think it's better than Mitsuhide's counter move or any of the other counter moves present in this game or other games. Now, like with the other counter moves, there's a little bit of a window where you're stuck in the animation, but it's too late. So if you use it and then the enemy AI doesn't attack because its AI is kind of random in that regard, and then attacks you after your counter window, you're gonna take some damage for free. So I'm not sure that this attack is reliable if you're gonna play this game on the hardest difficulty. One mistimed guard / counter might lead to your death. But if you're paying attention and know the window well enough, I can see this move being really good and abusable as a kind of pseudo-opener. His other special move, it just restores a chunk of his Musha. It's actually really good. I mean, if you have to go from one group of enemies to the other and you don't have Musha, you can quickly top up your Musha bar before you going into the fight. It's a little time consuming to do so I'm not sure you always want to do that, especially because in Samurai Warriors, the games tend to ask you to quickly defeat one group of enemies and then juggle a couple more objectives while you're at it. It's all about clearing groups of enemies and then moving on really quickly to the next one. Still, this is a nice tool to have. I like it, but I wouldn't say it's OP or abusable. Overall, in Samurai Warriors 2, I really like Musashi. He's got good crowd clear, good ability to kill officers, high attack speed, a few guard breaks, a couple cheesable tools. In Samurai Warriors 2 alone, I'd probably rank him like an A+, maybe S tier. I don't know. I think he feels just a little shy of S tier in Samurai Warriors 2, but quite close. He's at the upper end of A+. Now, skipping ahead to Samurai Warriors 3, because obviously I haven't played that game. Now, skipping ahead to Samurai Warriors 4, because I never played Samurai Warriors 3, because I don't own a Wii and don't read Japanese, yada yada yada. So in Samurai Warriors 4/42, he's still pretty damn good, but his ability to clear large crowds no longer really stands out compared to any other character with the introduction of hyper attack. Also, of his two special moves, the one he kept was not his counter move. Instead, he kept his Muso top-up move. Now, in this game, it also slams the ground, but the damage is kind of negligible and it hits kind of a small area. I don't think this is a move you really want to use in combat. And with using hyper attacks to clear absurdly big groups of enemies and fill up your Muso bar really fast, I don't really think you need to use this special. In my time playing him in Samurai Warriors 4, I basically never used Musashi's special move. Maybe I'm wrong about that, maybe it is really good. I could see it potentially being a good tool in the high floors in survival mode. So if any of you guys have reached floor 100 with Musashi in survival mode or cleared all the nightmare difficulty stages with Musashi in Samurai Warriors 4 or 4-2, let me know in the comments if his special move is very good or not. But I think missing the special counter attack that he had in Samurai Warriors 2 kinda hurts him, because now he doesn't have a great opener. He has to open by doing melee combos, which, you know, in Samurai Warriors 4 and 4-2, it's fine in in like most situations, but if you're like me and you like to try find some challenge out of these games, you know, playing the stages on Nightmare mode, reaching floor 100 on survival mode, then Musashi lacks any kind of special abusable strength that truly makes him stand out. So I'd probably give him somewhere like maybe a B+, but I'll say A- for his gameplay strength in Samurai Warriors 4-2, which is going to leave him with a final gameplay/power level ranking of A. He's really solid, really well-rounded, his attacks are fast, they reach far, they deal nice damage. He lacks any kind of special cheese move to make him truly broken and in the S tier, but he's still really, really good. Now, moving on to story and characterization. Musashi had a pretty fun and memorable story mode in Samurai Warriors 2, where he was introduced. He has unique variants of existing battles, and a fun but cheesy rivalry with Kojiro Sasaki. And then, you know, Katara Fuma shows up because he always shows up in a whole bunch of different people's story modes in Samurai Warriors 2. And, you know, to do his usual routine. Chaos. His story in Samurai Warriors 2 is all about finding meaning in battle and what to do as a warrior after peace and unity reigns across the land. This causes him to clash with characters like Kojiro and Katara, who don't want peace and unity to come. They think a warrior's place can only be valid in times of war and hardship. And Musashi deals with a kind of internal struggle of like enjoying the battles at times but not wanting to because he doesn't want to be like Kojiro or Katara. And it was all pretty good. I think it was a nice way to end the series, especially with the resolution that Musashi makes that a warrior is still useful when times of great war and hardship are over. A blade used to cut enemies down can also be a blade used to protect the weak and the innocent. As the final story mode you unlock in Samurai Warriors 2, this was a nice note to end it on. And that's about all I have to say about Musashi's story, because in Samurai Warriors 4 and 4-2, he has a nearly non-existent role in the story. Honestly, I think he only shows up in like 1 or 2 story mode stages, and I don't even think he has cutscenes. I think his only cutscenes and dialogue in Samurai Warriors 4 and 4-2 are in survival mode, chronicle mode, and those kind of modes. Nothing really substantial. I always feel disappointed to play a Samurai Warriors game and not really see Musashi much, but then again, the story doesn't exactly demand his presence. As much name recognition Musashi Miyamoto has in real-life history as a historical figure, he actually played a very minor role in the Sengoku period. So I do actually really like his story mode in Samurai Warriors 2, but other than Samurai Warriors 2, he's pretty much a background character, a bonus character who's only really on the roster who provide a fun, unique playstyle and moveset, but not really be a character that's relevant to the plot. So I'm gonna give his final story and characterization ranking a B+. Alright, next, let's talk about Musashi Miyamoto's design. Musashi Miyamoto has had pretty much the same design in every game, and that's good. I don't think they should change it because I really like his design. He's got a very classic Ronin, roaming samurai kind of look. The big hair bun, the shirtless but with a big blue coat look, has a few Japanese characters written on the back of it, and I believe they mean something along the lines of the undefeated or the undefeatable or something like that. But hey, these Japanese characters look even cooler when you don't know what they mean. Hence why a bunch of white non-Japanese speaking hipsters get these things tattooed on their arms and shit. His dual swords that are just slightly ornate and decorative also look really cool. Musashi looks sick, and he looks a bit more over the top in anime than a lot of the other Samurai Warriors characters, but they managed to walk a fine line where he has that kind of over the top, larger than life anime look while still not looking out of place. In my opinion, he's straight up one of the coolest looking characters in Samurai Warriors, so it's an easy S tier in design for me. So, to give Musashi Miyamoto his final score now, he got an A in gameplay and power level, a B+ S in story and characterization, and an S in design and cool factor, which leaves him with a final score of A+, toppling all the competition and being the highest ranked character so far. Musashi Miyamoto is not in Samurai Warriors 5. I guess that makes sense, given that this focuses on the early days of the Sengoku period, and Musashi doesn't come in till much later, but it's a shame. I'm really gonna miss him. I really hope that we can get to a stage in the series where he's reintroduced and, you know, give him a proper role in the story. I know that Samurai Warriors as a series has basically moved away from the character-specific story modes, but wouldn't it be cool if they added just one to their latest Samurai Warriors game? Just one character-specific story for Musashi Miyamoto. If any character in the roster deserves it, it's him. He's probably one of the most recognizable names of feudal Japan. But hey, that's probably just wishful thinking, but now I'll miss him and eagerly await his return. I'm sure he'll be back in the series eventually, right? That's gonna do it for now. Farewell, Musashi. See you in the next one. Next up, from the random character generator, we go from Master Swordsman to Big Dumb Meathead. It's Masanori Fukushima.
これで家康に対抗できる力を持てるはず。
頭で勝て！てめえはいつもそうだ！なんで勝手に決めやがる！なんでいつも一人や！
三成、なぜ俺たちを秀吉様から引き剥がし地方に追いやった？
俺たちのことがそんなに信じられねえのか！俺たちになんで一言言わねえんだ！なんで！
So I personally got my first introduction to Masanori in Warriors Orochi 3, because like I've said several times, but will keep saying I never played Samurai Warriors 3, I'm sorry, okay? But Samurai Warriors 3 is where he made his debut, but only as a unique NPC. He became a playable character in Samurai Warriors 3Z, but seeing as that game was Japanese exclusive, most people didn't get to see that version of the character. However, he actually first came on my radar from playing Samurai Warriors 2, even though Masanori is only a generic NPC in Samurai Warriors 2. He still had a fair amount of dialogue and interactions with the other characters in that game. Looking back, I wonder if they had considered him as a playable character for Samurai Warriors 2, but he just didn't make the cut for whatever reason. But as far back as that game, Koei was clearly considering him and thinking about his role in the story. Masanori Fukushima is Mitsunari's rival while serving under the Toyotomi, and then he becomes his enemy when he decides to side with Ieyasu over Mitsunari when the West versus East divide happens after Hideyoshi's death. But we'll get to more of that when we cover his story. For now, let's talk about the gameplay mechanics and power level with Masanori. In Warriors Orochi 3, I remember Masanori feeling quite weak and awkward, but to be honest, it's been a long time since I've played that game and I don't own it anymore. I can't go and check or capture any footage for it. So for this character, I'm just gonna judge Masanori's gameplay and power level in Samurai Warriors 4 alone. Maybe that's a little unfair to him, maybe it's not as holistic as it should be, but sorry, I don't have the time to either learn Japanese or to start capturing footage from my PlayStation 3 for Warriors Orochi 3. This will have to do. You get what you're given. So, in Samurai Warriors 4 and 4-2, Masanori is alright, but really nothing special. Like every other character in Samurai Warriors 4, he can clear big groups really easily with hyper attack. However, a lot of his normal and charge moves are actually pretty mediocre. Hell, even his Muso finisher, even his rage finisher are pretty mediocre when compared to a lot of other characters in that game. Despite carrying a big old mace as a weapon, a lot of his attacks, even the Muso and rage finisher moves, have a lot smaller of an AoE than a lot of characters in Samurai Warriors 4, and don't seem to deal any more damage to compensate for that as well. He's still powerful, of course, because every character is super powerful in Samurai Warriors 4, but he just feels a little shoddy and awkward compared to a lot of other characters in this game. His special move decreases nearby enemies' defense, but also increases their attack. This can actually be quite useful because you can use it and then Muso or Spirit Rage or use any other means of invulnerability and deal some big damage in that window while that special effect is on them and while you can't take damage back from their increased attack. So this special move does have its uses, but it's kind of needlessly risky. You wouldn't use it unless you have a full Muso bar, a full Spirit Rage bar, etc. Especially if you're going to play the difficult stages on Nightmare mode or try to reach floor 100 in survival mode. Overall, in terms of his gameplay mechanics, his power level, he's not terrible, but Masanori just feels a little bit below average to me. So I'm going to give him a C in the gameplay score. I'd kind of expect a big dumb meathead wielding a giant club to have attacks with a much bigger area of effect and higher impact. But speaking about big dumb meatheads, let's talk about Masanori's characterization and story. So like I said, Masanori is basically a big dumb meathead supporting character. He's loud, obnoxious, strong, but not very bright. He reminds me a lot of various anime characters if they were boiled down to be pretty much nothing else than just a big dumb meathead. He's constantly screaming at the top of his voice about how he's going to prove himself and threatening to fight anyone who makes fun of him or talk shit about him. If you watch a lot of anime, you've probably seen this character type before, either as a obnoxious protagonist or as an obnoxious side character, or maybe a rival. I'd say he works best in the context of being a supporting character, part of a group, which he is. He is introduced in part of a trio alongside Mitsunari and Kiyomasa. In that trio he works because Mitsunari's kind of the cool, level-headed but smug, smart guy of the group, whereas Kiyomasa is another strong warrior that Masanori is a close friend with. It's kind of the yin to Masanori's yang, balancing him out and reining him in when he needs to. Where Masanori struggles and suffers as a character is when he's on his own. To be honest, the writers of Samurai Warriors haven't really done anything with Masanori outside of his interactions with the other two members of this trio. When Masanori is part of this trio, he's loud and obnoxious. When he's separated from this trio, he basically doesn't say anything and fades into the background. Him and Mitsunari are constantly at each other's throats, and Mitsunari and Kiyomasa both take turns making fun of him for being the idiot of the group. Honestly, I keep referring back to this group dynamic because there really isn't much to talk about Masanori on his own as an independent character. In pretty much every version of the character we've seen, he's always a supporting character first and foremost. And to be honest, a bit of an annoying and cliched supporting character at that. So, as divisive as this might be, I'm going to give Masanori a D ranking for story and characterization. I know, a D? What are you thinking, Game Ranker? Well, he's a minor character who manages to get on my nerves the few times he does pop up in the story. He's half as long, but also half as bright. I don't think there's any other character in the series that is both this minor and this annoying. So yeah, sorry Masanori, you get a D ranking in story and characterization. I just really don't like this guy. Anyway, let's talk about his design. Masanori's design has always been pretty alright. Honestly, I'm struggling to find much else to say. His hairstyle and exaggerated facial expressions sell his big dumb meathead attitude visually, which is good. Personally, I think he suits the exposed chest look he has in Samurai Warriors 4 more than his armor-clad look in Samurai Warriors 3. For being a big, not too bright brute, it makes sense to show your muscles off. His weapon looks pretty cool and suits the kind of character that he is. Like, there are positives, I just don't find him that interesting. It's a pretty good design, and it highlights his personality visually, which is what a good character design should do, right? Maybe I'm just biased because I don't like this character's story and characterization, but his design also doesn't really do all that much for me, despite having its strengths. But I'm gonna try be fair here and give his design score a B. His character design does what it needs to do and doesn't stand out too much as a result. So Masanori is not in the initial cast of characters we know of for Samurai Warriors 5. That's to be expected, of course, course, with the time period, but I'm gonna be honest, if Masanori Fukushima never made a return in future Samurai Warriors games, I wouldn't really care. I don't really think it'd be a great loss. But if any of you watching this are big fans of Masanori, please let me know in the comment section why I'm off base and why you love the character. But to total up Masanori Fukushima's final score now, he has a gameplay and power level ranking of C, a story and characterization ranking of D, and a design and cool factor ranking of B, which of course leaves him with a final score of C. He was an alright character, one I didn't mind having in the roster, but one I'm not gonna miss very much, even if he never makes a return. But to be honest, what I think they could do is have Masanori make a return, because historically Masanori is a very significant figure, and just do his character better the second time around. If they can do that, I look forward to seeing what they come up with. Farewell, Masanori. Now next up in the random character generator, we move away from the big dumb meathead to somebody who's got the brains and the brawn. It's Sakon Shima.
That's ridiculous.
He's the one who killed Nobunaga. Mitsuhide is only taking his rightful place of succession. It's foolish.
What's foolish is him believing that the same thing will not happen again. When it certainly will.
Who will make it happen?
Nobunaga's other great retainer, Hideyoshi.
I am Sakon Shima of Yamato. For justice, I will fight for Lord Hideyoshi.
Sakon Shima made his debut in Samurai Warriors 2. To be honest, he stood out to me because look at the size of that sword. I'm a man who likes big swords, alright? And because he has a big sword, let's start straight away by talking about how good he is at using that big sword. No innuendo intended, I swear. It was an accident. So, in Samurai Warriors 2, Sakon Shima feels very solid right out of the gate. He's really strong at clearing big crowds of enemies, and his weapon has a naturally long reach. He's got a melee guard break opener, one that you can easily combo off of. It is a bit slow, but it is a serviceable way of breaking an enemy's guard, and allows you to combo off of it, so it's quite nice. His 2-square triangle attack can also act as a guard break, even though it's not technically a guard break, but it easily hits behind your enemy, so it's, you know, close enough. And his 2-square triangle is also a really good crowd clearing move, but to be honest, that's just Sakon Shima as a whole. Pretty much every one of his attacks is a big AoE attack. He might be the single best character when it comes to dealing with big crowds of enemies in Samurai Warriors 2. In general, all of his normal and charge attacks are pretty great, especially when it comes to dealing with big groups of enemies. But most of his attacks seem to knock up, knock away, send enemies flying, so when it comes to getting off really long and high damage combos on single high HP units, Sakon's maybe not the best at that, but I think how well-rounded and strong he is more than makes up for that. He's a special type character and he has one of, if not the best special move in Samurai Warriors 2, and his other special move is just kinda mediocre to be honest. His special triangle is the one that deserves attention. It calls cover fire. Basically you summon a whole bunch of projectiles to rain down from the sky in front of you, dealing damage and staggering and stunning enemies. It can even accidentally extend your combos by sometimes hitting airborne enemies and causing them to be juggled slightly further than they should be allowed to. But that's a random chance thing, it's not its main use. Its main use is protecting you while you pull off long combos, uninterrupted because enemies trying to swing at you get hit by these raining projectiles. And at the higher ranks of the special move, it even breaks enemies' guard, so it's a fantastic opener as well. Pretty much this move alone makes him S tier in terms of gameplay and power level in Samurai Warriors 2. Like I said before, his other special move is pretty garbage. It's a mediocre AoE blast that has a really big wind-up time. A wind-up time that gets bigger and bigger as you use higher ranks of the move. I basically never use it because I have a ton of other good AoE moves that don't require me to stand still defenseless for several seconds, so why would I use this? But one of your special moves being garbage, even as a special type character, doesn't hurt Sakon Shima too much in Samurai Warriors 2, because he's just so good in every other regard. Never played much Samurai Warriors 3, so I'm going to skip ahead to how he works in Samurai Warriors 4. Now, in Samurai Warriors 4, Sakon Shima is still pretty good, but he's not as good as he used to be. This is largely due to the fact that his crowd clearing abilities no longer stand out, as opposed to basically any other character in the cast, because hyper attacks make every character god tier at clearing big groups of trash enemies, so there you go. Also, his special abilities are no longer nearly as good as they used to be, especially his cover fire ability. Its wind-up is so big, but the payoff seems so much less. Doesn't even seem to stagger or stun enemy officers. And with how many enemy officers are coming at you on a regular basis in Samurai Warriors 4, you really just can't afford to use cover fire anymore. It's just no good. Same goes for his mediocre ground slam move that carries over from Samurai Warriors 2. So now in Samurai Warriors 4, he's a special character with two pretty shit and useless special moves. He's still quite a solid character in all the other ways. When you can't hyper attack for various reasons the game throws at you and you need some good crowd clear from your regular moves, Sakon Shima's got you covered. Also, both his Musho finisher and his Rage Mode finisher are both really strong in Samurai Warriors 4. So he certainly doesn't feel like a weak character, don't get me wrong, but his comparative lack of strength to Samurai Warriors 2 is going to drag his gameplay score down a bit. If I was just ranking Sakon Shima in terms of his gameplay mechanics in Samurai Warriors 2 alone, he would easily be S tier. In my opinion, the two best characters in Samurai Warriors 2 are Sakon Shima and Kojiro Sasaki. But in Samurai Warriors 4, Sakon just doesn't feel that great. It feels like he got redesigned for the worse, as cover fire took a big nerf. So that's going to leave Sakon with a final gameplay score of A. Next, let's move on to Sakon Shima's story and characterization. Sakon is both a great sword-wielding warrior and a strategist. Arrogant, drunk asshole, but also someone who values honesty and justice over everything else. This value system leads him to choose to side with Hideyoshi over Mitsuhide at the Battle of Yamazaki, even though his superiors in his clan order him to do the opposite. During the Battle of Yamazaki, he meets Mitsunari and decides to put his talents to use serving him. He's convinced almost instantly that Mitsunari has the best vision for Japan, even though he's an abrasive asshole who doesn't get along with anybody. From there on, Sakon is kind of the rock in the bromance with Mitsunari, and Sakon goes to the ends of the earth to try and fulfill his dreams. Well, you know, when he can. He has a busy schedule of being condescending, sexist, and attempting to neg women. Yeah, to be honest, this kind of puts a dampener on the character. There's a lot I like about Sakon in Samurai Warriors 2, but I just don't know why he has to be this much of a dickhead to every female character he comes within a 100-meter radius of. For me, it quite heavily detracts from how much I can like Sakon. I don't know why they made him so much of a sexist douche in Samurai Warriors 2, because other than that, he's a pretty cool and likable character. In Samurai Warriors 4, we get all the same likable qualities of Sakon Shima, minus the misogyny, which I think is a good move. Samurai Warriors 4 shows just how likable and dependable Sakon is as a friend to Mitsunari. Mitsunari is very lucky to have him, and everyone around him is weirdly ready to remind him that Sakon's like too good for him. Poor guy. But other than these positive changes, there's really not much different about Samurai Warriors 4 Sakon as opposed to Samurai Warriors 2 Sakon. He's just less of a dickhead. So in the end, I really like Sakon Shima. He's a really cool dude. He is kind of a cool dude in kind of a standard and predictable kind of way though. Sakon is a pretty straightforward, almost bland character, but he's cool and badass and also a dependable good friend. But in my opinion, there's nothing about Sakon that is like particularly special and stand out that would make me want to put him in the S tier or even at A+. So I'm going to give him a final ranking of A in the story and characterization department. Now moving on to Sakon's character design. Sakon Shima's character design is very simple, and it's barely changed since his introduction in Samurai Warriors 2. He's always looked pretty cool. Big long coat and armor, a big ass sword wielded by a middle-aged man with a scar on his face. He looks pretty cool. He's always looked pretty cool, but just not all that interesting or special. He doesn't really have an edge or something creative that makes him really stand out. But he doesn't really need it. It's not that his design is bad by any means. So yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say about his character design. It's just generally good and solid. So I'll give his design an A. It's cool, it's just not super special, iconic, or interesting. Now to summarize and give Sakon his final score. In gameplay and power level, Sakon scores an A. In story and characterization, Sakon also scores an A. And in design and cool factor, he also scores an A. So, can you guess what his final score will be? It's an A. Sakon Shima was a great addition to the cast, one of my go-to Samurai Warriors characters. He plays super well, he looks pretty cool, and he's a likable and interesting personality. He's not in Samurai Warriors 5 yet that we know of, but who knows what the future will hold. I suspect at some point, maybe Samurai Warriors 6 or Samurai Warriors 5 Part 2 will pick up after the Hinoji incident, where Samurai Warriors 5 will likely end, and focus on Hideyoshi and his conquest of the land as the main story. And if that ends up being true, then I'm sure Sakon Shima will definitely return alongside Mitsunari and a bunch of the other characters from later in the timeline. Until then, I'm really gonna miss him, but I do really look forward to seeing what they do with him in the new anime ink paint art style. Until then, Sakon Shima, you can stay in the tea house getting drunk with your hoes. We'll call you back when we need you. Peace out. Now, next character pulled from the hat is Motochika Chosokabe.
The waves of history swallow everything until we are all spat back out as flotsam, and then we are gone. Great leaders full of ambition, vast armies full of aggression. They approach this island intent only on making their own history. So be it. If destiny dictates that I follow the others who have been swallowed up, then I will go. But they will remember my name.
Motochika made his debut in Samurai Warriors 2 Extreme Legend, and he is one of the weirdest looking characters in that game, and kind of feels like a strange choice as a new character, to be honest. Unlike Toshiie, Katsui, Kojiro, and one or two of the other new characters added in Samurai Warriors 2 Extreme Legends, Motochika was a complete surprise to me. He seemed completely out of the blue. In Samurai Warriors 2 base game, Katsui Shibata and Kojiro Sasaki were both unique NPCs with distinct looks and voices. Toshiie was addressed in dialogue and had a role to play in the story, whereas Motochika, he was often there, but only as another generic officer in a long list of generic officers. There was nothing alluding to him being especially significant or that he'd be coming up present in the base game, and even when he became a unique character in Samurai Warriors 2 Extreme Legends, he doesn't feel like he has a big role to play in the story, but more on that later. For now, let's talk about how Motochika plays. When you first pick up Motochika in Samurai Warriors 2 Extreme Legends, he initially feels pretty awkward and unconventional, but not actually weak, and the more you play with him and you get the hang of his mechanics, you learn his strengths, but he also has some weaknesses. To start with, his melee attacks all have a very small hitbox and feel a little awkward, and it's pretty easy to miss these melee attacks against opponents like right in front of you, because his shamisen and hand-to-hand attacks are very short-ranged and have a small hitbox. However, despite this, he's not bad at clearing big groups of enemies, quite the opposite. He actually has a number of very strong options for crowd clearing. For example, several of his moves create little orbs that float in the air, and can be detonated by one of your magical attacks. These orbs deal pretty nice damage in a pretty big area of effect, and they can be detonated from quite a long distance. Your orbs can also deal damage to officers blocking from behind, thus breaking their guard. These orbs are a very nice tool for clearing big groups of trash enemies, but not all that great for killing officers. To set up and use these orbs, you need to combo to create them, then combo again or Muso to detonate them, and enemy officers can pretty easily interrupt either the setup or the payoff and, leave you with no reward in the end. Pretty much your only good officer killing move is your one square triangle, and it has a very small hitbox, and even if you do hit with your one square triangle, it isn't even that great, to be honest. There's better officer killing juggling moves out there for sure. Motochika has two very interesting special moves to play with. What's interesting is that both of them actually cost a big chunk of your Musho bar to use. That seems like a pretty steep cost, so what's the payoff for that? Is it good? One of your special moves creates several orbs which you can detonate with your magic attacks, or Muso. But to be honest, this feels like a bad way of creating orbs, since you kind of want to use your Muso to detonate them if you are in a pinch, but you're consuming Muso bar to create the orbs? I don't know. Feels a bit awkward, and I don't really find myself using this special move. Your other special move launches a tidal wave at your enemies, and it's pretty nice. It deals decent damage, it knocks enemies back, it hits in a pretty huge AoE, but it can be blocked, and you can't combo off it since it sends enemies flying. So I don't know if it's really worth using for the cost of the Muso bar it uses. It's pretty good if you're overwhelmed by a really high number of enemies to just soften up the crowd and break up the formation. Overall, Motochika Chosokabe and Samurai Warriors 2 Extreme Legends is pretty damn fun to play, and I really like the idea behind its gameplay design. But I think I like the idea a bit more than I like it in practice. I think he could use a little work. Maybe it would have been good if your orbs did some damage, stunned, or slowed the enemies before you detonated them. Or maybe if they locked onto and tracked enemy officers. I don't know, but something to make detonating your orbs more reliable, especially against lots of enemy officers. So in Samurai Warriors 2 XL alone, I'm going to score him a B in terms of gameplay, because he's quite above average in clearing big groups of enemies, but quite below average for dealing with officers, and you have to deal with officers. Now, I never played Samurai Warriors 3 because it was a Wii exclusive or a non-English PS3 title, so I don't know how Motochika plays in that game. So let's see how he works in Samurai Warriors 4 then. Motochika is fine in Samurai Warriors 4, that's it really. He only carries over one of his special moves, and it's the one to create a bunch of additional orbs. It doesn't cost Muso now, which sounds like it should be great, like OP, right? But in all honesty, there isn't much of a point in creating orbs with Motochika anymore. They just don't deal all that much damage, and they don't hit a crazy big AoE, especially now that there's hyper attacks and OP Muso and Rage Mode finishes in the mix. That and just the general power increase of all the characters. I just don't see the point in setting up orb combos like you used to in Samurai Warriors 2. He's got a great Muso finisher and a Rage finisher. All the rest of his kit in Samurai Warriors 4 just feels pretty average, nothing standout. He hasn't got anything in Samurai Warriors 4 that is like OP or broken or something you can use to cheese the game. So with all that being said, I'm going to give him a gameplay ranking of B in Samurai Warriors 4 as well, which is going to give him a gameplay score of B overall. Right from Motochika's introduction until now, he's always been a pretty average character in terms of power level and gameplay mechanics. He's a bit above average in some things, but a bit below average in other ways. So in the end, it all averages out for him. So let's move on from his gameplay mechanics and talk about his role in the story and his characterization. In Samurai Warriors 2 XL, he starts out being one of the few feudal lords left opposing Hideyoshi, and he seems to oppose him just because he likes to be the underdog, I guess? He opens up with a dramatic speech about defying fate and overcoming the odds and not letting fate take its course. Blah 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 blah, defy my destiny. However, after you fight your first battle and defeat Hideyoshi, Motochika gains respect for him and decides to join him, so much for all that fate nonsense. Hideyoshi then decides to show what a fucking psycho he is and arranges for Motochika's brother to be murdered right in front of him, all in a convoluted way of testing Motochika's loyalty to Hideyoshi. So as you can imagine, Motochika takes the news surprisingly well. After being mad for a minute, the next battle he's kissing Hideyoshi's ass and talking about what a great leader he is and how he had only realized it sooner. I mean, Motochika's out here taking forgiveness to like Naruto levels of insane. Anyway, he then fights on the side of the Western Army to preserve Hideyoshi's legacy once the West and East Army split happened. And throughout all of this, he waxes poetically about fate and fighting destiny and representing the underdog and the future with tons of characters, basically every unique character he comes across, to the point it feels like this is a round of group therapy, except you're the patient and every unique NPC you come across is like your therapist. In the end, Motochika didn't leave a huge impression on me. Like, he's alright, he's kinda cool I guess, but I think they could have done a lot more with his character, and while I like his general personality and demeanor, his interactions with the cast in Samurai Warriors 2 Extreme Legends feel a bit hackneyed and overdramatic. Now I will actually talk about Motochika's story in Samurai Warriors 3 for a change, and that's because Samurai Warriors 3 represents a major turning point for the character. They do a much different take on Motochika in Samurai Warriors 3 as opposed to Samurai Warriors 2, and I think it is actually a big improvement, so let's start. So in Samurai Warriors 3, Motochika is like besties with Mitsuhide, and comes to his aid in several battles, and then eventually even helps him overthrow Nobunaga, and then unite all of Japan in a hypothetical ending. It's a little weird and funny to me that in this story mode, Mitsuhide is basically portrayed as a bit of a spineless wimp who needs Motochika to push him to get things done. But it's a pretty entertaining dynamic between the two characters. However, it seems a little weird to me that someone like Motochika, who is the lord of a pretty large territory and army, has his entire story revolve around supporting another character in Mitsuhide. This kind of treatment carries over to his portrayal in the Legend of Shikoku story mode in Samurai Warriors 4, where Motochika features as a prominent character. In Samurai Warriors 4, Motochika remains besties with Mitsuhide. Unfortunately, this time, instead of accompanying him to Hinoji and at the Battle of Yamazaki, Mitsuhide is killed and Motochika is left to carry on his rebellious spirit without him. And then he forms a strong bond with Koshosho, and his story becomes largely about supporting her and Gracia. Is that how you pronounce it? Gracia? In both of these story roles, Motochika is a pretty cool character, but he always feels like he's taking the backseat. His motivations are always being inspired by somebody else and following and supporting and upholding their beliefs. So in the end, overall, Motochika has always played a pretty minor supporting role in the series, and he's also stayed a bit more consistent than most characters in Samurai Warriors. They never seem to have dropped this whole fighting fate, fighting destiny, not wanting to be swept away in the tide yada yada thing that he's had going since his first appearance, and I think it makes for like a fairly likable character. He's pretty cool, but a pretty minor role. So in the end, I'm gonna say that Motochika is just a little above average in the story department, so I'm gonna give his final story score a B+. Now let's talk about Motochika's weird-ass looking character design. Right from the first time I saw him, Motochika really stood out to me as having a very weird and distinct design. For me, this is one of the rare occasions where I actually think his Samurai Warriors 2 design looks worse than future design. If you couldn't already tell, I'm a bit biased towards the old games, especially when it comes to character designs, but you know. I think what mostly kills his design in Samurai Warriors 2 is the weird ripped skinny jeans. He looks a bit too much like an 80s glam rocker in Samurai Warriors 2 Extreme Legends, and it makes him look quite a bit out of place, but also he just doesn't look that cool in my opinion. In Samurai Warriors 3, I think his design has improved quite a bit. He's still got that weirdo punk rock look going, but he's got a little bit more armor on now, and overall his Motochika's design just looks a lot more practical. Or maybe I'm just biased because now you can see his abs. In Samurai Warriors 4, he's a bit more covered up, but I think the torso armor is a bit too goth looking. Overall though, I really do like Motochika's design, and I've always liked it. I really like him shredding with his electric guitar, causing magic blasts to come out of his shamisen, and having Motochika in the cast just really adds some spice and variety to the cast of Samurai Warriors. But I can't help but feel like he looks just a little bit out of place, but also that his look doesn't match his personality all that well. Motochika gives quite a serious and staunch and kinda emo vibe, and yet he looks like he should be a boisterous, energetic, and loud character, when he's actually quite quiet and dour. So for all these reasons, I'm gonna give his final design score an A-. He looks quite cool and he's quite unique and distinct, but his look doesn't quite match both the setting, but also his own personality. So in the end, I like Motochika quite a lot, and yet I'm not gonna be too upset that he isn't in Samurai Warriors 5. Yes, he was a pretty good addition as a supporting character to the cast, but given his position in history, I think more can be done with this character, and he's not going to suffer from having a radical redesign. But that begs the question, if Motochika Chosokabe isn't going to be in Samurai Warriors 5, then when is he gonna be making a reappearance in the franchise? Isn't Nobunaga's Rise and Fall where Motochika's story is the most significant? I don't know. Maybe they'll focus more on what he does after Mitsuhide's passing. Or maybe he just won't return at all. In the end, I like Motochika quite a bit, but if he doesn't return, I'll be fine with it. So let's quickly summarize his final score. In gameplay and power level, Motochika scores a B. In story and characterization, Motochika scores a B+. And in design and cool factor, Motochika scores an A-, leaving him with a final score of B+. Okay, that's gonna do it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching. This is Game Ranker. If you enjoyed the video, please click the thumbs up. And if you want to stay tuned and see each and every character in this massive Samurai Warriors roster get ranked, then hit the subscribe button. I'll be putting out one of these every week or so until I've done the entire card.